Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Stierle and Tom Hazard, to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Purchasing Truth. I'm Tom with your host, Bill Stierle. And you know, Bill, there are so many things that I feel like we could talk about today. So many shocking current events recently, just prior to recording this episode. And the reality is there's a lot of violence going on in the world right now. And today, I think it would be very helpful to talk about the impact of violence on truth.
That's a great thing, Tom, that we're going to really address this. After the shootings happened in Dayton, immediately I texted my brother, who lives in Dayton with his family, to see if his daughters or any of his family members were in the area. Initially, he texted me back, all good. That there was nobody in the environment. And then 3 hours later, he texted back, well, actually, one of my coworkers, his daughter was on the shooter's hit list.
Oh my goodness.
So, and this hit list was reported to a school counselor.
Yeah, I had heard something about this in the news, that he had a hit list in high school, was it?
That's correct. Now, if you think about the mental health issue and the limitations of the ability to handle mental health issues, we got to look about what happened to homeless? What happened? How do we get homeless? How do we get mental health issues? Well, here's the thing that's so unsettling. Is actually during the Reagan administration is when all of the health programs that were trying to manage the rise of mental health issues, all of them got cut. That caused this influx of homelessness and influx of mental health issues out into the environment that then had to be dealt with the hospital system, which then the emergency rooms were not equipped to do mental health stuff. And the amount of money when a homeless person is sick that shows up at an emergency room, all of a sudden the money got transferred in that directory. Of course, then that impacted the insurance companies. That's now impacting. It's like, oh my gosh, it is such a limited mindset that people get into, is like, well, I don't want to help that person. It's like, well, would you like to spend, instead of spending a dime on them, would you be willing to spend $10 on them? Well, I don't want to spend $10 on them. That's what we're doing. Can we just please spend a dime on them rather than spending $10 on them? The mindset, regrettably, regarding truth has a limited point of view because a person's limited perspective of the implications of making a yes or no vote on something, all the different eras that took place because well-meaning people moved into a best discussion of what would take place. A very limited mindset when it gets reinforced, what winds up happening is truth is lost. The truth is that I'd rather spend 10 cents on a mental health issue than spend $10, or in this case, what are we up to? 31 lives or 32?
Yeah, I was going to say the loss of life, right?
Loss of life.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden we've got this whole wiping out of this group of human beings and the mental health issues on that family, on the community, on the nation. Do we want to be a scared place? Do we want to live in a world that lives this way? Well, I guess if we want to, support certain groups of special interests, I guess we can go with the gun lobbyists. I guess we can go with the Wall Street hedge funds that made the most money out of keeping gun, laws and weakening gun laws. Instead of, we're meeting their need for financial security, and the companies that are, and the individuals that are shareholders that are funding those funds. But we are not meeting the need for safety. And yeah, it's like, certain word choices and word phrases, we've got to take serious. Now, Tom, this is big stuff. You see, I kind of opened up the Pandora's box and wove a bunch of things together, because as a person that looks at the big picture and knows, as I have developed my adult mind away from my child mind, because the child mind is more black and white.
I wish more people would, listen to their adult mind and not their child mind. Not calling anybody out.
No, not calling anybody out. But guess what? If a child mind has been reinforced around the labels of racism, the labels of narcissism, the labels of, bipolar, the labels of sociopath, if you've been built around those word choices and the definitions that go behind them, you're going to keep seeing the person in that space. And the person that has those blinders on, that is, literally their eyesight can't see past the bigger picture, they don't have the words. And what you and I are looking to do on these podcasts is essentially creating privileged moments of consciousness and awareness. It's
an interesting choice of word, privileged. Why the choice of the word? How does privileged come into that?
Because the listeners are just lucky to get this point. It's like somehow they found themselves here. Somehow they found themselves. It's a privilege to shift from a complex, a black and white narrative, a very limited narrative, all the way to a bigger picture of the way to think and see the world. All right, so let's see if we can take some language that doesn't work, that's being used, and see if we can give the environment words that will work better. Okay, let's see if we can do that. All right.
That sounds great. Let's do that.
All right. So let's take on one of my least favorite words. And one of my least favorite words is the word rhetoric. I don't like it. I don't like it because it's a 75-cent word or a $1.25 word. It's not a 10-cent word. It's not a 5-cent word. It's a 75-cent word. Why is it a 75-cent word? Unless you are in debate school, unless you have went to college, unless you have some sense that the word rhetoric means word choice, well then media people, please just start using word choice, phrasing of things, a specific sentence that causes an emotional charge to take place. Please do not use the word rhetoric again. Don't use it.
Because rhetoric, I think in common social circles is a label that is used to dismiss what someone says as biased, is it not?
That's right. But guess
Yeah.
what? Nobody has the mental stretch or capacity to get that analysis that you just did. Now, I'm not calling people dumb. I'm just calling words ineffective. It's like,
Got it.
if the words change their meaning over time. Tom, if you and I had zoot suits on and we're going out to the speakeasy in the 1920s, we're going to have a gay old time. But not today, we're not.
No, we wouldn't be doing that today.
The phrasing of the word gay has been utilized here. Just like other words have changed their meaning, we've also got to be mindful of, here is the messaging that's taking place. And when somebody takes a word and associates the word caravan with the word invasion, what they're doing is creating an emotional response to certain word choices that are doubling down on the racetrack bias that the listener has bought into. And we went over racetrack bias in the past is that when somebody is at a racetrack and they're betting on a horse or betting on a dog or out gambling, what they're doing is they put their bet down, and just before in the last 5 minutes, okay, 5 minutes less, I'm sorry, no more bets. You didn't get there in time. The urgency, the anticipation is thing. 73% of bets at the racetrack are double down bets. They're not initial bets.
Wow. So people are really, to use the cliche, sticking with that horse.
They're sticking with the horse. They're sticking with the trifecta. They've done the research. They put their $10 in. And then in the last 5 minutes, they put another $50 on it. Another $70 on it. Let's see if I get my math right. It's like they're reinforcing the bias or the belief that they have.
Is that because people don't want to be wrong?
Their self-worth does not want to take the hit that who they betted for, or here a case, who they voted for, is that person. I don't want to be associated my self-worth. He can't be that bad. So the person standing behind him in the rally holding up Trump, women for Trump, the person holding that, the woman that's doing that, she's in the confirmation bias of betting down. Yes, her vote was the initial, 22%. And then now she's standing around with this remaining 73% of the bet, going like, I have to stand with this person that said and did all of these things because I bet on him first. I'm not going to take my bet and putting on those Democrats because, they're angry people. Democrats are angry people. Clearly, they're much angrier than the president, who's calling the Democrats angry people. What he's doing, he's just placing the anger of their lives in a specific target. You're angry, focus it on the Democrats. You're angry, focus it on the immigrants. You're angry, focus it on the healthcare issues because we have a better healthcare. They just won't vote for our healthcare. It's like, that's not what took place. So can you see how the violence is going up? The violence going up because of word choice. And there's also, you got to, the media, especially the reporters and the newscasters and the writers, please pick word choices and word phrases that don't use the word lie. You replace it with the word with truth looks like. Don't use a label and diagnosis, those words don't help us. Yeah. So anyways, I'm getting a little bit energized, but does that make sense about why you and I can, and the rest of the population are so bewildered about why is that person still having a MAGA hat on? Why is that person still holding that belief of going to a rally? Why is that person holding that?
That does help with that quite a bit, Bill. And it also helps me understand how there really are two different truth perspectives to a lot of the statements being made recently by the president. Take his White House speech after these two, events. And his White House speech is very much, from a language perspective, in stark contrast to what he says at his rallies and what he writes in his tweets.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
And
I feel sad and disheartened around authenticity not being there. I feel unsettled because, yes, he is making the truth sentence of, that we as a nation need to disavow. But me as a person is not going to be counted on the we as a nation. Because when I leave off the personal, what I'm sending a signal to passively that the listener doesn't even understand that they're getting is the bias is that I'm just doing what the job says for me to do, but I am not that kind of person because you have betted on me and the language, the word choice that says that these are the people that are causing my pain. Instead of saying, like President Bush said, these are not the people that are causing your pain. I am going to make the speech at a mosque to say, do not hurt these people. Immediately after right after that speech that Bush did at the mosque after 9/11, hate crimes went down against Muslims because he said, this is not them. Don't hurt them for these other people. Strong separation.
very strong separation. And another stark contrast from what our current president is saying, which is essentially that the guns didn't pull the trigger and that, everybody who does these things is mentally ill, basically. Or, they said so many different things. And then also tries to tie any legislation on gun control to immigration reform, right? I mean, did you see, although there were very veiled statements, right, in his White House speech, but they were there.
You know what the interesting part of that, and Tom, we've done this on other podcasts, is we went down the 3 levels of dopamine to raise dopamine: reward, anticipation, uncertainty.
Right.
Notice that fits in the category of the uncertainty and the anticipation that he might do something, but the uncertainty about whether it's going to get done or not. Now, I'm betting a great deal because he's such a master marketer, seller of a brand and a brand identity that a lot of people can, pay hundreds of millions of dollars to buy one of his, expensive locations that he has, in the different environment. So it's when you're selling something like that and the person's going like, well, yeah, I guess I'll live, off of Central Park and I'll live right in this building. And yeah, it's got the Trump thing to it. And yeah, I have the money. Who cares? I'm just going to throw it at him. Why? Because, gosh, when you are known to live in this location, now, some of those people are starting to realize the value of their property might be dropping. But, over a period of time, the great replacement is going to be the replacement of his names on buildings. Now, is it starting to take place? Yeah, some places are taking his name off the building because they're noticing that people are not going to come to this place. They're losing their market share. They're getting hit in the pocketbook. by associating their name or his name with their product or service or location. So the bias is that when a person is betting on something, it will have a form of stability to it for a certain amount of time. It'll have a certain amount of stability to it for a certain time. And then what happens is that the person will just get bored of coming back to the same racetrack, and not want to bet there, because the value isn't really there. That's, again, a part of the process. So does this start to making some sense about how the impact of violence on the truth is that when violence takes place, the limbic part of our brain, the safekeeping part of the brain, gets activated and gets energized. And it gets activated and energized so much that it wants to reinforce what it's already voted on and already done.
That's amazing to me. So it seems that this statement our current president made about these two mass shootings in 24 hours, I can see sort of the bias on the one side where you look at his speech and you see he was reading from the teleprompter, very mechanical, how he was breathing, his mouth was dry. He seemed completely insincere, like he was being forced to eat a vegetable he really dislikes, but he was going to do it because he knows that's what he has to do. And so one perspective is, wow, this is such a contrast to what he says at his rallies and he tweets every day, even the 24 hours prior, after these shootings, 24 hours prior to him making the speech, that what he says is not believable. But then on the other side, you'd have people that are on his team, saying that, well, there he is. He's saying it. He's saying there's no place for white supremacy in America, and you got to give him credit for that. And and so your belief is reinforced.
Your belief.
So instead of bringing us together, it seems that speech further divided us.
It did further divide us. Yeah, it did, because it wasn't congruent and it wasn't in alignment. I mean, even if he started right now, and got his message somewhere to the middle. If there was, what'll happen is there'll be some very, very small modulation about, going back to assault rifles being, maybe, going back to what the initial the legislation on the assault rifles expired.
Right. I think it was passed in 1994 under President Bill Clinton. And then, but I guess it had a time clock on it. It was only temporary. And once it expired, I mean, you can see all the statistics really speak for themselves about how gun violence in America has gone up since then. But so the other interesting thing that pointed out to me, looking back at the history, is that an assault weapons ban is completely constitutional because it's been done before. It wasn't ruled unconstitutional back then. No one even really challenged it. But
I think too. I mean, when we get into the right to bear arms and the well-armed militia, I think we really a big part of that is to keep the power in the hands of the people in two different ways. Number one, so you don't get a tyrannical king, or a tyrannical dictator, doing things to take things away. But the other part of it is that, what nation in their right mind, and this is including Russia and China or any nation, would want to come to these shores with their troops. They would not want to come here because we are way well armed if they show up here. So that part has a validity to it. That part has a really good anchor to it. It's like, who wants to come here? We got some. But if you're going to arm, or people are going to be armed, then you need to train them and they need to be a part of a group. So if it's a well-armed militia, and anybody that wants to own a assault rifle, you know what? I'm sorry. 6 months, year-long training, follow-up monitoring over the lifespan of that weapon.
Oh, yeah.
Monitoring on the mental health of the person that's using it.
We require more training of people to get a driver's license than we do to get a gun.
It is very true. And, there's an expectation that people are going to be safe around this thing. What happens is that that's not what's alive. What's alive is that there's certain people that are struggling with their own physiology, and they can be radicalized. They can be messaged into violence. They can be messaged into belonging to something bigger than themselves. It's important to belong to something bigger to ourselves, a nation, but the words have got to be congruent to the thing that is going to be more of a life-serving value set. What does respect for the country look like? What does respect for somebody that is a citizen, no matter what the color of their skin is, no matter how they got here and how they're doing here and what they're doing? Are they an add to our society? The numbers are in. Immigrants are an add. They're less violent, and they add more value to American and the American society than people that have been here for 2, 3, or 4 generations that moved to the place of entitlement. Who's entitled? Who's really entitled? The immigrant doesn't think they're entitled. The immigrant thinks they're glad they're here and they're willing to work their butt off in order to get there. That's what their mindset is. As one of my good friends that is a teacher that teaches an inner city school, he goes, their parents are so happy their kids are here. The kids work in the classroom. And here's the first generation that comes here. They know they have to bite the dust. They know they have to bust tables. They know they have to clean up trash. They know they have to pick from the fields. But what they're doing it is for their kids and for their grandkids to move forward in the field of time. I mean, that's commitment that many generational Americans do not have.
It's commitment and it's sacrifice too. And I think there is the entitlement is a good word. Privilege is probably another. I've always been very mindful of that. And I have tremendous respect for immigrants who are in that position. Yeah. So I tell you, I come from a family that my heritage goes back to the 1600s and even the Mayflower, coming over to America. But I, in my conscious mind, know that I'm no better than any other American citizen or person that's come to this country. And my wife's family is very different, very recent generations into the U.S. and having seen her grandparents who came over here when they were children and how hard they worked to do exactly what you said, Bill, to give their children and their grandchildren a better life. That's what by and large, the vast majority of immigrants are looking to do.
That's right.
Well,
that's right.
The whole that could be a whole nother discussion another time, but I'm really struck, Bill, by your example earlier in this very episode, where you contrast the speech of George W. Bush after 9/11, who was speaking from a mosque, making a unifying statement that this is not what the Muslim faith is about. All Muslims didn't do this. You could disagree with George Bush philosophically and politically on many different things, but you have to admire that integrity and speech and say that was the action of a president.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
And it is in such stark contrast to what our president now just said this week. And I'm curious as to your reaction, whether this is a good statement or an unfortunate statement. But after that speech, Mayor Pete Buttigieg tweeted, "At times like this, it would be helpful if our country had a president." Very interesting statement. Basically saying the president is not being presidential without trying to state that fact. He's
with Pete Buttigieg's sentence about if we really need a president here. The word choice of need a president is not going to penetrate the person that's already put the bet down on "this is my president." It's not gonna penetrate that. The bet has already been placed. But would you be willing to hear a sentence that would have worked a little better?
Oh, I would love to hear this, Bill.
Would sound more like this: respect and kindness and consideration for the people that have been affected like this needs language and word choice that is more cultivating and more nurturing and more comforting than what the president has to offer. I would prefer the president to be one that would stand for healing and nurturing, not one that creates and reinforces the beliefs that he's aspiring at the current moment.
Wow.
Now what happens is the person that voted, or for the values, even a little stronger at the end of that sentence, for the values that we hold as Americans, that we're all in this together. Now, he just said we're all in this together. That's his value. We're on this together. Now, Tom, that's presidential, but the word presidential does not penetrate a person that's already placed their bet on Donald Trump. It doesn't.
Yeah, so you need to lead more by example, and the statement that you make or would make, or, I guess it's maybe both, is what does that, and not essentially labeling the president, although in a long sentence instead of a single or a couple words, labeling the president as unpresidential.
Yeah.
I can understand he was probably frustrated when he wrote that, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, also, and for any, whether it's, Joe Biden's speech or Pete or Mayor Pete or all the different responses, regrettably, stop explaining to all of you candidates out there. Stop explaining. Stop it. Use value-based narrative. Use narrative that's going to stick. Stop trying to justify. Drop labels and diagnoses. Please, please, please.
Yeah, that's what they're all doing. I saw Beto O'Rourke do that, labeling the president absolutely as a racist, and all these sorts of things. And that's just going to really, unfortunately, probably breed more violence, is it not?
That's right. As one famous comedian once said, if you use profanities and labels, you're going to win the battle, but you're going to lose the war. Because you're going to get pinned in that you are a profanity guy, and that's going to affect respect, safety, recognition, trust. It's going to affect that. So you don't want to use profanity or labels, because what happens is respect will plummet. And that's exactly what has happened to Trump. He has no idea that his respect has plummeted. Part of it is that he runs on a belief is money equals respect, not language equals respect.
That's for sure.
This hasn't affected my bottom line. It actually increases my bottom line. Why? Because any rich person that he's got the text as is throwing money at him. All of the owner of Home Depot just gave him several $1 billion to run, or dedicated all of his fortune to Trump. I'm going like, Trump's not stopping this. But guess what? The idea is he is going to win the battle of financial increase. He's going to lose the war of respect and the war for integrity, the war for kindness, cooperation. He loses those wars. Right now, he's just winning the battle of money.
Well, and he thinks that, yes, money equals respect, and he thinks money equals winning is the other big thing for him. And regrettably, I don't know if you saw this in recent days, but many of the Democratic presidential hopefuls have been on record so angry and frustrated since these two shootings over the weekend that they're all using profanity on live interviews on television. And that, I think I saw one of the late night programs was pointing that out. And that, I think, is not helpful to their cause.
Okay, so let me start running for a president here. I'll be a president for a presidential candidate. What protection looks like for the American people is that these weapons of war are not to be used in a peaceful country. Did I use any profanity?
No. Not at all.
Did I speak from passion? Yes. Was it a needs-based or a value-based narrative? Yes.
Absolutely.
Now, what would that do for me? People will look.
Well,
he handles this one. He knows exactly what he's focused on.
Yep.
Not the enemy image and not the gun person. I want people to have guns. Why? Because it's a part of our American identity. People like that. I'm not going to take away that choice, but I am going to protect the nation, and I am going to protect our police officers, and I'm going to protect the public. I'm doing that first. And yes, some people's rights to have a weapon of war might not get met unless they have 6 months of training, that they've been vetted at this time, that gun has a certain lifespan, that it knows where it goes next until it's melted down at the end of its lifespan. That's the way I would go to meet the need for protection, but that's me.
Yeah, or join the U.S. Armed Forces Reserves, in lots of ways you can do that.
There's a lot of ways to shoot this gun. There's a lot of ways to have the experience of having this gun. It's tons of ways, just not in your home. So at a moment of depression or a moment of furiousness, you go and take that out on others. That's the way I would do it. But
I agree.
And now all of a sudden that's called a common sense / mutually respectful way to allow choice with guns and allow protection to take place with the public. Notice I did both of those. Choice with guns and the connection to that gun or weapon meet the need for safety and protection for people in a safe country.
I think there's something there for everybody, isn't there?
There is. There's something there for everybody. And it's doable. It's
cool.
Just doable. All right, man.
Well,
this has been great, Tom.
Yeah.
All right, buddy.
I think it's a good place to wrap this one up. And very helpful, certainly for me as a, listener, participant here, but listener for sure, understand a little more of what's happening and gosh, what could be happening, right?
And it's compassion for the MAGA hat wearing people, compassion for the people that bet their vote and are doubling down. Just have compassion. Don't call them stupid. Don't call them names. Why? No, they're doubling down on a bet that they made, and their identity and their self-worth is invested in this. It's not the collective safety that we would like as a nation or the collective respect that we would like as a nation at the current moment.
Wow. All right, Bill. Thank you. Let's leave it there.
All right, buddy. Take care. We'll talk to you next time.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you for listening to this Purchasing Truth podcast. We trust that you have enjoyed this engaging and thought-provoking conversation. Our hope is that you've received value, found clarity, and broadened your truth perspective in this episode? If you did, leave us a review or visit our website, purchasingtruth.com. Join us again for another informative and content-rich discussion here at the Purchasing Truth Podcast. Don't just accept whatever information comes your way. Join the discussion. Discover your own voice. Purchase your own truth.